I am Savannah Morgan, 27, and just last month, my role as the family protector? Yeah, it completely backfired. The estate I'd worked tirelessly to shield from my grandparents, $3 million, their life's legacy, exploded into a vicious showdown at their old house on Maple Street. My estranged parents, who'd abandoned me to their care years ago, stormed back with my sister, demanding I hand over everything. When I refused, the room went dead silent. "You're no daughter of ours," my mother shrieked, her eyes blazing as my father and sister nodded coldly. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative. Now, back to the story. Their venom didn't break me. It lit a fire. I wasn't just fighting back. I was about to turn their greed against them and secure my grandparents' legacy for good. Growing up, my grandparents' house was my sanctuary. The scent of Graham's lavender soap lingered in the air, and Pop's old jazz records hummed through the walls. They raised me when my parents, Richard and Elaine, chose ambition over family, chasing deals across the country and leaving me behind at 6. My sister, Clara, 4 years older, tagged along with them, soaking up their praise while I was the afterthought. Graham taught me to braid my hair, her hands steady but trembling with age, and Pops would slip me extra cookies when Graham wasn't looking, winking like we shared a secret. Their love was solid, unwavering, unlike the fleeting calls from my parents, always laced with excuses. "We're closing a big deal, Savannah," they'd say, their voices tinny over the phone. Clara would chime in, bragging about her new designer shoes, never asking about me. By the time I hit law school, I'd learned to lean on myself. I graduated top of my class, fueled by late-night studying in the library, my laptop glowing as I pored over trust law. My grandparents beamed at my graduation, Graham's eyes misty as she clutched my hand, Pops whispering, "You're our star." My parents didn't show, too busy they claimed, though Clara posted party photos from Miami that same weekend. It stung, but I buried it. Their absence was nothing new. Then came the call that changed everything. Graham's cough had worsened, and Pop's heart was failing. I moved back into their house, juggling my new job at a local firm with their care. I'd read case law at their kitchen table, Graham's quilt over my lap, while Pops dozed in his recliner. Their estate, $3 million in savings, investments, and the house, was their pride, built from decades of hard work. They wanted it preserved, maybe for a community center one day, a dream Graham would share over tea, her voice soft but certain. But I knew my parents. They'd always sniffed around money like sharks. When Graham mentioned they'd called recently asking about the will, my stomach twisted. I saw their game, wait for my grandparents to pass, then swoop in. I wasn't naive. I'd spent years watching them prioritize profit over people, their smiles sharp as knives when money was on the table. That night, lying in my childhood bed, the one with the creaky springs, I made a vow. My fingers gripped the quilt as I stared at the ceiling, moonlight slicing through the blinds. I'd protect Graham and Pop's legacy, no matter what it took. Law school had armed me with tools, trusts, estates, protections, and I'd use every one. My parents thought they could outsmart me, their forgotten daughter, but I wasn't that scared 6-year-old anymore. I was ready to fight, and when the time came, I'd make sure their greed choked on itself. But to understand why I was so determined, I have to go back to those early years, the ones that shaped my distrust like clay hardening in the sun. It wasn't just one big betrayal, it was 1,000 small cuts, starting from when I was little, each one ignored by my parents while they showered Clara with attention for the shallowest wins. I remember this one birthday, mine, turning 12, clear as day, because it was the first time I really saw their favoritism for what it was. A spotlight that skipped right over me. The house was quiet that afternoon, Graham bustling in the kitchen with a chocolate cake, the kind with extra frosting because she knew it was my favorite. Pops had strung up streamers in the living room, his hands shaky but determined, taping them to the walls with that old ladder that wobbled under his weight. I'd invited a few friends from school, and we were playing board games on the rug, laughing as I rolled the dice, my fingers sticky from candy. Then the door burst open, and there were my parents, Richard and Elaine, sweeping in like they owned the place, though they hadn't visited in months. Clara trailed behind them, her hair in perfect curls, carrying a shiny new bike they'd bought her, just because. "Happy birthday, kiddo," my dad said, ruffling my hair absently, his eyes already scanning the room as if checking for something valuable. He handed me a card, store-bought, with a $20 bill inside. And that was it. No hug, no real smile. My mom air-kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming, and immediately turned to Graham. "Mom, you look tired. We should talk about getting you some help around here." But it was code. I knew even then they were hinting at the house, the savings. Clara plopped down next to me, smirking. "Look what I got," she said, pulling out photos of her new bike, not even glancing at my present stacked on the table. As the party went on, I tried to join in, but my parents pulled Clara aside, praising her loudly for some school award, a participation trophy for a spelling bee she hadn't even won first in. "Our little star," my mom cooed, her hand on Clara's shoulder, squeezing gently as Clara preened, twisting a curl around her finger. "You're going places, sweetie. That bike? Just the start." I sat there, my cake uneaten, watching them ignore the straight-A report card I'd left on the counter, the one Graham had framed because she was so proud. I'd worked hard for those grades, staying up late with flashcards, my eyes burning under the desk lamp, but when I finally piped up, "I got all A's this term," my dad just nodded vaguely. "That's nice, Savannah, keep it up. No questions, no celebration." Clara's eyes met mine, smug, as she whispered, "They said my award means I'm gifted." The sting hit me then, deep in my chest, like a knot I couldn't untie. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door and staring at my reflection in the mirror, my face flushed. Why did they always choose her? Clara's successes were bought, dance classes they paid for, outfits that made her look the part, but mine were earned, quiet and real, yet they dismissed me, their gazes sliding away like I was invisible. Graham knocked softly later, slipping in with a slice of cake. "They're fools, honey," she murmured, her arm around my shoulders, warm and steady. "You shine brighter than they know." But it planted a seed. My parents weren't just absent, they were greedy, valuing flash over substance, and Clara was their mirror. Flash forward a few years to high school graduation. I'd been valedictorian, speeches practiced in front of the mirror until my voice didn't shake. The auditorium was packed, lights hot on my face as I stood at the podium, my cap tassel swaying. Graham and Pops were in the front row, her dabbing her eyes with a tissue, him clapping so hard his palms must have stung. My parents showed up late, sliding into seats in the back, Clara yawning beside them. After the ceremony, hugs from friends, photos with teachers, but when my family approached, my mom's first words were, "Clara's starting college next fall, full ride for business, can you believe it?" Clara grinned, flipping her hair. "Yeah, Mom and Dad helped with the application. They're the best." I clenched my diploma in my fist, the paper crinkling under my grip, forcing a smile. "What about my speech?" I asked, hoping for once they'd notice. My dad patted my back awkwardly. "It was fine, kid. Long day, huh? No pride? No questions about my plans for law school." Later at the dinner Graham hosted, they toasted Clara's future, glasses clinking, while I sat at the end of the table pushing food around my plate. Clara leaned over, her voice low. "Don't be jealous, Sav. Not everyone's cut out for the big leagues." Her words twisted like a knife, but I didn't react, just nodded, my jaw tight. That night, alone in my room, I paced the floor, footsteps muffled on the carpet, replaying every slight. Their greed wasn't new. Stories from Graham about how they'd borrowed money and never repaid, how they'd eyed the house during holidays, but favoring Clara's superficial wins, beauty pageants, social clubs, while ignoring my real achievements. It was deliberate, a way to keep me small, out of the way. I sank onto the bed, hugging my knees, tears hot on my cheeks. Graham found me. Sat beside me, her hand rubbing circles on my back. "They're lost, child, but you've got us." And Pops from the doorway added, "And smarts they'll never have." Those moments built my wall, brick by brick. By college I'd stopped expecting anything from them. Calls were rare, always circling back to money, hints about Graham and Pop's savings. Clara's updates came via social media. Vacations they funded, her success in sales jobs that screamed pyramid scheme. My law school acceptance? I didn't tell them. Graham and Pop celebrated with a homemade dinner, toasts with apple cider, their faces glowing. "You're unbreakable," Graham said, her voice cracking. But the invisibility lingered, a quiet ache. It fueled me, though. pushed me to study harder to prove my worth to myself. And when Graham first mentioned their health declining, that old distrust flared. I knew my parents would return, not for love, but for the estate. Clara would be their pawn, flashing her fake charm. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I'd built something they couldn't touch. That realization hit me like a freight train one rainy evening, right there in Graham's kitchen, as I helped her sort through old photo albums while Pop napped in the next room. The rain pattered against the window panes, steady and insistent, matching the drum of worry in my chest. Graham had just finished telling me about another call from my parents. Casual at first, but then probing, asking if she'd updated her will lately, mentioning how properties like this are gold mines these days. Her voice had trailed off, her fingers trembling slightly as she flipped a page in the album, revealing a faded picture of me as a toddler, held by her and Pops, my parents absent even then. I paused, my hand hovering over a stack of photos, the glossy surfaces cool under my fingertips. That's when it clicked. They weren't calling out of concern. They were circling, waiting for their moment to pounce on the estate. The house, the savings, $3 million built from Pop's factory job and Graham's thrift, it was all they saw. Not the memories, not the love. Just dollar signs. I set the album down carefully, the thud soft on the wooden table, and excused myself to the study, my steps quick but quiet so as not to wake Pops. The room smelled of old books and dust, the desk lamp casting a warm glow as I flicked it on, its chain rattling. My heart raced, a mix of anger and fear churning in my gut. I couldn't let them destroy what Graham and Pops had built. I'd seen enough in law school, cases where greedy relatives tore families apart over inheritances. I sank into the creaky chair, pulling my laptop closer, the screen flickering to life. My fingers flew over the keys, typing irrevocable trusts into the search bar, the cursor blinking expectantly. This was it. The aha that shifted everything. An irrevocable trust would lock the estate away, untouchable by anyone but the designated beneficiaries, protected from claims, even fraudulent ones. It was a shield, ironclad and legal. But it had to be done right, and soon. The hours blurred as I dove in, rain lashing harder outside, thunder rumbling in the distance. I clicked through legal databases from my firm account, eyes scanning dense text, highlighting sections on asset protection. My neck ached from hunching, but I ignored it, jotting notes on a yellow pad, the pen scratching furiously. Grantor retains no control, I muttered to myself, underlining the phrase. That meant once set up, even Graham and Pops couldn't change it easily. Perfect against manipulation. But the struggle kicked in fast. The forms were labyrinthine, pages of clauses on trustees, beneficiaries, tax implications. I rubbed my temples, the pressure building like a vice. What if I messed up a detail, one wrong word and it could be contested? I paced the small room, floorboards creaking under my socks, stopping to stare out the window at the blurred streetlights. My parents were clever. They'd hire lawyers, forge whatever they needed. Clara would back them, her loyalty bought with promises of a cut. I sat back down, determination hardening my jaw. I called my colleague, Mia, from the firm, a trusts expert I'd befriended during internships. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice sleepy but alert. Savannah? It's late. What's up? I explained in a rush, my words tumbling out as I gripped the phone, knuckles whitening. I need to protect my grandparents' estate. Irrevocable trust. Can you walk me through it? She paused, then dove in, her tone professional, guiding me like a lifeline. We talked for over an hour, her explaining nuances, naming myself as trustee for now, with contingencies for after their passing, funding it with the house deed and accounts, ensuring it's filed properly to avoid probate pitfalls. I typed as she spoke, the keyboard clacking, my free hand twisting a lock of hair nervously. It's intense, Sav, she warned. But if done right, it's bulletproof. Get appraisals, notary, don't skip steps. By dawn the rain had eased to a drizzle, but I hadn't slept. My eyes burned from the screen glare, coffee mug cold beside me, stained rings on the desk. The struggle peaked then, an internal battle. Was I overreacting? Graham and Pops trusted me, but this felt like assuming the worst. I stood, stretching my stiff back, and peeked into their bedroom. Graham stirred, smiling faintly. Up early, honey? I nodded, throat tight, and hugged her, her frail arms wrapping around me. That sealed it. Their legacy deserved protection, not plunder. The next days were a whirlwind, but I focused, treating it like a case file. I gathered documents, the house deed from the safe, yellowed but intact, bank statements stacked neatly, investment portfolios printed out, edges crisp. At the notary's office, the air-conditioned and sterile, I watched Graham and Pops sign, their pens moving slowly, hands spotted with age. Graham's signature wobbled, but she squeezed my hand after. "You're doing right by us," she whispered, her eyes clear. Pops nodded, his grip firm on my shoulder. Back home I filed electronically, the upload bar crawling, my breath held until the confirmation email pinged. Success, the trust was live, irrevocable, the estate transferred seamlessly. I exhaled sharply, leaning back in the chair, a weight lifting off my chest. But keeping it hidden? That was key. I didn't tell anyone outside Mia, no slip-ups to friends, no hints to colleagues beyond necessities. At work, I'd review the trust docs during lunch, sandwich forgotten, ensuring every clause was airtight. Beneficiaries, Savannah Morgan, with provisions for charitable distribution upon my passing, it read, aligned with their community center dream. The massive win came in waves. First, the relief as weeks passed without issues, then the quiet power knowing I'd outmaneuvered potential threats. My parents called once, fishing again, but I deflected, voice steady, hanging up with a satisfied click. In quiet moments, like washing dishes, suds bubbling, I'd replay it. The aha, the grind, the triumph. It wasn't just legal, it was personal armor. Graham noticed my lighter step, patting my cheek. "Something good brewing?" I'd smile, drying my hands on a towel. "Just taking care of things." The trust was my secret fortress, built brick by legal brick, ready for whatever storm my family brewed. And deep down, as I tucked the confirmation papers away in a locked drawer, key turning with a soft snick, I knew, when they came, and they would, it would hold. And hold it did, but not without the world cracking open first. Graham slipped away peacefully in her sleep one crisp autumn morning, her hand limp in mine as I sat by her bed, the monitor's beep fading into silence. I'd been there all night, holding vigil, my fingers intertwined with hers, feeling the faint pulse weaken until it was gone. Pops followed 2 weeks later, his heart giving out during a quiet afternoon nap in his recliner, the newspaper still folded on his lap. The grief hit like a tidal wave, drowning me in waves of memories. Their laughter echoing in the empty house, the scent of Graham's cooking lingering in the kitchen curtains. I wandered the rooms those first days, touching their things. Graham's knitting needles in the basket by the window, Pops's favorite mug on the shelf, chipped from years of use. Tears came unbidden, hot and relentless, as I curled up on the couch, clutching a photo of us three at the park, my younger self grinning between them. But beneath the sorrow, a steel resolve hardened. The trust was active now, the estate fully under its protection, with me as trustee. I'd reviewed the documents again that week, spreading them across the dining table under the harsh overhead light, my eyes tracing every line, every signature. It was ironclad, assets locked, distributions outlined for maintenance and eventual charitable use. No one could touch it without my approval, and certainly not through underhanded means. Yet, I knew the storm was brewing. Whispers from distant relatives hinted at my parents' interest, casual mentions of them asking about funeral details but really probing the will. Clara had even texted once, a bland, "sorry for your loss," that felt like reconnaissance. They were coming. It was only a matter of time. And tonight, on the eve of what I sensed would be the confrontation, I prepared like a general fortifying a battlefield. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the living room windows as I paced the floor, my socks whispering against the worn hardwood. My stomach knotted, a familiar ache from childhood's slights resurfacing, but sharper now, laced with anger. Why couldn't they just stay away? Let me grieve in peace, honor Graham and Pops the way they deserved. Instead, they'd descend like vultures picking at the bones. I stopped by the front door, hand resting on the knob, cool metal grounding me. Reluctantly, I knew I had to ready the house and myself for their arrival. Rumors said they'd drive in tomorrow, uninvited, with papers in hand. Mia had warned me earlier that day over coffee at the firm, her mug steaming as she leaned in. "Families like yours? They forge wills, claim undue influence. But your trust? It's a fortress." Her words echoed as I moved to the study, flipping on the lamp, its warm glow illuminating the desk where I'd built it all. I pulled the trust binder from the locked drawer, key jangling in my trembling hand, and laid it open, pages rustling softly. My fingers traced the clauses, committing them anew to memory. Irrevocable upon funding. No revocation without court order on fraud grounds. Beneficiaries protected. It was my weapon, but preparation meant more than review. I grabbed my laptop, settling into the chair, its leather creaking under my weight. Emails to colleagues flew from my fingertips. Mia for legal backup, my boss for time off if needed, even a private investigator friend for background on forgeries. Just in case, I typed, hitting send with a decisive click, the screen reflecting my determined gaze. But doubt crept in, a whisper in my mind. What if they brought lawyers? What if Clara played the sympathetic sister card, her tears as fake as her concern? I pushed back from the desk, standing abruptly, chair scraping the floor. To steady myself, I headed to the kitchen, the heart of the house where Graham's presence lingered strongest. I brewed tea, the kettle whistling shrilly, steam rising as I poured, hands wrapping around the mug for warmth. Sipping slowly, the herbal blend soothing my throat, I stared out the window at the darkening yard, leaves rustling in the breeze. This was their legacy. The garden Pops tended, soil still turned from his last efforts. The swing set Graham pushed me on as a kid, chains creaking faintly. I wouldn't let greed tarnish it. Setting the mug down with a soft clink, I grabbed a notepad, pen scratching as I listed defenses. Copies of originals hidden off-site, witnesses from the notary, timestamps on filings. Each bullet point grounded me, turning anxiety into action. As night fell fully, stars pricking the sky, I climbed the stairs to my room, steps heavy with exhaustion. But sleep wouldn't come easy. I sat on the bed, quilt pulled over my lap, flipping through old photos on my phone. Graham's smile, Pop's wink. A text buzzed. Clara, we'll be there tomorrow to discuss things. My thumb hovered over the screen, pulse quickening. Discuss meant demand. I replied curtly, fine, then tossed the phone aside, fabric muffling the thud. Lying back, staring at the ceiling fan's slow spin, blades cutting the air, I rehearsed responses in my head. The trust is set, I'd say, voice calm. Your claims won't hold. But inside, emotions churned, grief mixing with fury, a storm matching the one outside, wind howling against the panes. Reluctance gnawed at me, part of me wanted to flee, sell the house, start fresh. But no, this was my stand. Graham and Pops had given me everything, I'd give them this protection. I turned off the light, room plunging into darkness, and closed my eyes, breathing deep. Tomorrow would test me, their greedy return looming like a shadow. But with my legal knowledge sharpened, colleagues on alert, I was ready. The trust wasn't just paper, it was my vow, unbreakable. As sleep finally tugged, my last thought was clear. They'd underestimate me again, and it'd be their undoing. Morning light filtered through the curtains, pulling me from a fitful sleep, my body heavy as if anchored to the mattress. I lay there for a moment, listening to the house's quiet creaks, the absence of Graham's footsteps in the hall or Pops's coffee grinder whirring. Grief tugged at me anew, but I shoved it down, swinging my legs over the bed's edge, feet hitting the cool floor. Today was the day. They'd arrive, and I'd face them head-on. I dressed deliberately, choosing a simple blouse and slacks, the fabric smooth under my fingers as I buttoned up, a subtle armor. In the mirror, I smoothed my hair, meeting my own steady gaze, whispering, "You've got this." Downstairs, I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling as steam rose, and sipped it black, the bitterness sharpening my focus. My phone buzzed. "Mia, call if you need backup." I texted back a thumbs up, pocketing the device, its weight reassuring. The doorbell rang at noon, sharp and insistent, echoing through the empty rooms like a summons. My heart thudded, a dull rhythm in my chest as I approached the door, hand pausing on the knob. Twisting it slowly, the latch clicking, I swung it open to reveal them. My parents, Richard and Elaine, standing on the porch with Clara beside them, suitcases at their feet as if they'd already claimed the place. Dad's face was lined deeper than I remembered, his suit rumpled from the drive, while Mom's makeup was flawless, lips pursed in that familiar judgmental line. Clara shifted her weight, flipping her hair over one shoulder, a designer bag slung on her arm. "Savannah," Mom said first, her voice syrupy sweet, stepping forward without invitation, her heels clicking on the threshold. She pulled me into a stiff hug, her perfume cloying, arms loose around me. "It's been too long. We're so sorry about Mom and Dad." She meant Graham and Pops, but the words rang hollow, her eyes darting past me into the house, scanning like an appraiser. I stepped back, breaking the embrace, my skin pricked. "Come in," I muttered, gesturing to the living room, my voice even despite the knot in my throat. They filed in, Dad grunting as he set down his bag, his hand brushing dust off his pants. Clara trailed, her eyes narrowing at the familiar furniture, lips curling slightly as if assessing value. We settled in the living room, me on the armchair, them on the couch, the space between us charged. Mom folded her hands in her lap, rings glinting under the lamplight, and leaned forward. "We've been thinking about you, dear. This house, it's too much for one person. And with the estate." Her voice trailed, but her intent was clear, probing like a finger in a wound. Dad cleared his throat, leaning back, legs crossed, ankle on knee. "Yeah, kid, we figured we'd help sort things out. Your grandparents left it all to the family, right? We brought some papers, just to make it official." He reached into his briefcase, leather creaking, and pulled out a sheaf of documents, sliding them across the coffee table toward me. The pages whispered against the wood, edges crisp. I didn't touch them yet, my fingers gripping the armrests instead, nails digging into the fabric. Clara chimed in, her tone light but edged, crossing her legs and smoothing her skirt. "It's only fair, Sav. Mom and Dad have been through a lot, supporting us all these years." Supporting? The word hung absurd. They'd barely sent birthday cards, let alone support. But she continued, smiling that practiced smile, teeth flashing. "And I've got ideas for the place. Maybe sell it, split the proceeds. You wouldn't want to hoard it all, would you?" Her eyes met mine, challenging, as she toyed with her necklace, chain twisting around her finger. The barrage built slowly, like pressure in a pot. Mom nodded vigorously, her head bobbing. "Exactly, we're family after all. Your grandparents would want us united." "United?" I bit back a retort, my jaw clenching, teeth grinding subtly. Instead I picked up the papers, flipping through them casually, though my pulse raced. They were forgeries, obvious to my trained eye. A will. Dated after the trust's creation, signatures mimicking Graham's shaky hand but too steady, too perfect. Clauses claiming the estate reverted to them as primary heirs, ignoring my role entirely. My fingers tightened on the edges, paper crinkling faintly. "You're looking well," Dad said suddenly, his attempt at a compliment laced with condescension, eyes flicking over me like I was a project gone wrong. "Law school paid off, huh? Though we always said business was more practical, like Clara here, she's closing deals left and right." Clara preened, straightening her posture, a smug tilt to her chin. "Yeah, Sav, you should see my commission checks. What do you even do? Push papers?" Her laugh was light, but it cut, her hand waving dismissively. I set the documents down carefully, aligning them neatly on the table, buying time as anger simmered hot in my veins. "I'm a lawyer," I said flatly, meeting her gaze, my voice steady. But they pressed on, Mom interjecting with, "Well, that's nice, but family comes first. Sign these, and we can all move forward. Evicting you isn't ideal, but—" The threat dangled, her eyes hardening, fingers drumming lightly on her knee. "Evicting me, from my home?" The word landed like a slap, my breath catching. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped to hide the tremble. "These papers," I started, but Dad interrupted, his voice booming. "They're legit. We had a lawyer draw them up. Your grandparents mentioned us often, wanted us to have this." Lies, all of it. Graham had confided their disdain, her voice weary over tea. But I endured, letting them unload, their words piling like weights. Clara leaned in closer, her perfume mixing with Mom's, overwhelming. "Come on, sis. Don't be selfish, we've got plans, renovations, maybe flip it for profit, you can stay a bit but eventually." She trailed off, shrugging, as if it were casual. Selfish? After they'd abandoned me? My fists balled in my lap, knuckles whitening, but I forced a nod, playing along for now. The contempt rolled on, backhanded digs at my solitary life, questions about why I hadn't settled down like Clara, each one a needle prick. As the afternoon wore on, sunlight shifting across the rug, I sat there, absorbing it, my mind racing ahead to the trust's protections. Their demands escalated subtly, hints at legal action, compliments twisted into insults. "You're smart, Savannah, but naive about family matters," Mom said, patting my hand, her touch cold. I pulled away slowly, skin crawling. Inside, resolve solidified. This gauntlet was just the start. They'd shown their hand, forged claims, manipulative pleas, and I'd weather it, waiting for the moment to strike back. The air in the living room grew thicker, charged with their unspoken expectations, as Mom's hand lingered in the space where mine had been, her fingers curling slightly before dropping to her lap. I shifted in my armchair, the cushion sinking under me, creating a small barrier of distance. Dad cleared his throat again, a habitual rasp that grated like sandpaper, and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze locking onto mine with that authoritative stare he'd used in rare childhood lectures. "Look, Savannah, we're not here to play games. Those papers are straightforward. Sign them and we can all walk away happy. Refuse and, well, things get complicated." His voice dropped at the end, a veiled threat hanging like smoke. I glanced at the documents again, my fingers itching to crumple them, but I kept my hands still, clasped tightly in my lap, nails pressing into my palms. The forged will stared back, ink too fresh, language too polished for Graham's simple style. Clara crossed her arms, her foot tapping an impatient rhythm on the rug, the soft thuds echoing my rising pulse. "Seriously, Sav," she said, her tone sharpening, eyes narrowing as she uncrossed and recrossed her legs. "Don't drag this out. Mom and Dad deserve their share. They've sacrificed so much." Sacrificed? The word twisted in my mind, a bitter laugh bubbling up that I swallowed down. My throat tightening. Mom nodded, her head tilting in that sympathetic way that never reached her eyes, her earrings swaying gently. "We've always wanted what's best for you, dear, but if you force our hand," she trailed off, exchanging a glance with Dad, their silent communication a well-practiced dance. He picked up the thread seamlessly, his hand gesturing toward the papers, palm up in mock invitation. "We're prepared to take this to court. Eviction proceedings. It's ugly, but necessary if you're unreasonable." The word eviction landed heavier this time, like a door slamming shut, my breath catching as I imagined strangers hauling boxes from this house, Graham's quilts tossed aside. I opened my mouth to respond, but Clara cut in, leaning forward aggressively, her necklace dangling like a pendulum. "And honestly, what have you done to earn it all? Hiding away here with them, playing house while we built real lives?" Her words stung, deliberate barbs, as she flicked a speck of lint from her sleeve, dismissing me with the gesture. Real lives, flashing credit cards and empty promises. My chest tightened, anger coiling like a spring, but I forced myself to breathe, inhaling deeply, the faint lavender from Graham's sachets in the drawers grounding me. Dad stood then, pacing a short path behind the couch, his shoes scuffing the floorboards, hands clasped behind his back. "We've talked it over," he announced, stopping to face me, his posture rigid. "If you won't cooperate, you're out. No more family ties, no support, nothing. We're disowning you. Officially." The verdict dropped like a gavel, his voice firm, eyes cold as steel. Disowning me? After years of their absence, now they wielded it like a weapon. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue pulled from her purse, the paper crinkling, though no tears fell. "It breaks our hearts, Savannah, but you've left us no choice." Her voice wavered artificially, hand pressing to her chest. Clara smirked faintly, quickly masking it with a sigh, her fingers drumming on the couch arm. "Yeah, it's sad, but fair. You've always been the outsider anyway." Outsider. In my own home? The room spun slightly, grief and fury blending, my vision blurring at the edges. I gripped the armrests harder, fabric bunching under my fists, knuckles aching. This was the escalation I'd dreaded, their formal cutoff, not just words but a declaration, severing what little thread remained. Dad resumed pacing, his steps measured, building the tension. "We'll give you a week to pack. The house goes on the market, proceeds split 3 ways as it should be." He waved a hand dismissively, as if erasing my life here. Mom chimed in, folding the tissue neatly. "We can help you find a place, maybe an apartment, something suitable. Suitable, like a consolation prize for the abandoned child." Clara nodded vigorously, her hair bouncing. "Or crash with friends. You must have some from that law thing." Her condescension dripped, eyes rolling subtly. I sat frozen, processing, my mind racing through legal counters, the trust's clauses flashing like shields. But externally I stayed composed, forcing my shoulders to relax, though my foot tapped once, betraying me before I stilled it. "You can't just—" I started, voice low, but Dad interrupted, looming closer, his shadow falling over me. "We can and we will, sign or leave. You're no longer part of this family." The finality hit, a punch to the gut, my breath shallow as I averted my eyes to the window, sunlight mocking the darkness inside. They piled on then, the conversation, no, the assault intensifying. Mom listed grievances, her voice rising. We raised you until you were 6, gave you everything before your grandparents interfered. Interfered? By loving me? Her hands gestured animatedly, rings flashing. Clara added fuel. And now you're hoarding their stuff? Pathetic. She leaned back, crossing her arms tighter, a satisfied glint in her eye. Dad halted his pace, pointing a finger at me, joint creaking faintly. Decision time, kid. We're done waiting. The room fell silent, save for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, each second amplifying the pressure. My heart pounded, ears ringing as I met his stare, resolve hardening amid the humiliation. This was their peak cruelty, disowning me in the home that had been my only real family. But it was also my turning point. I wouldn't crumble, I'd expose them. Slowly I reached for the papers again, fingers brushing the edges, not signing but stalling, my mind sharpening for the reveal. The weight of their eyes bore down, expectant, triumphant. Mom smoothed her skirt, a small smile tugging her lips. Clara checked her phone briefly, screen glowing, then pocketed it with a huff. Well? Dad pressed, arms crossing. I exhaled slowly, the air escaping in a controlled stream, steadying myself. This verdict, their disownment, was meant to break me, but it only fueled the fire. They'd regret this formal severance, their greed laid bare in this moment of raw power play. But before I could utter a word, my phone buzzed sharply in my pocket, the vibration cutting through the tension like a knife. I froze, my hand instinctively reaching for it, fingers brushing the smooth case as the buzzing persisted, insistent and out of place in this charged silence. Dad's finger still pointed accusingly, his face reddening slightly at the interruption, brows furrowing deeper. Ignore it, he snapped, his voice gruff, waving his hand dismissively as if swatting a fly. Mom's lips thinned, her tissue now balled in her fist, knuckles paling as she gripped it tighter. Clara rolled her eyes, huffing audibly, her foot resuming its tap, faster now, the rhythm betraying her impatience. The phone vibrated again, a second call, and I pulled it out slowly, screen lighting up with Mia's name, the glow casting a blue hue on my palm. My deepest humiliation crested in that instant, their verdict echoing in my ears, disowned and cornered in my own home, their stares boring into me like judgments. Sweat prickled at my hairline, a bead trickling down my temple, but I swiped to answer, pressing the device to my ear, my voice barely above a whisper. Mia? Now's not. But she cut me off, her tone urgent, words tumbling out rapid fire laced with excitement. Savannah, I just got the confirmation from the county clerk. Those timestamps on the trust filing, rock solid, and I dug deeper. Your parents' will? I cross-checked with a contact in forgery detection. The signatures don't match Graham's handwriting samples from her medical records. It's blatant fraud. I've got digital affidavits ready, plus the original notary's sworn statement. Emailing it all now, you're bulletproof. Her voice crackled slightly over the line, but each syllable landed like a lifeline, pulling me from the abyss. I straightened in the chair, spine uncurling, my free hand unclenching from the armrest, fingers flexing as relief flooded in, warm and sudden. Dad leaned closer, his breath audible, hot with frustration. Who is that? Hang up, we're not done. But I held up a finger, shushing him for the first time, my gaze locking onto his, steady now where it had wavered before. Clara snorted, crossing her arms tighter, fabric rustling against her body. Rude much? This is family business. Mom shifted on the couch, her skirt whispering as she uncrossed her legs, leaning forward with narrowed eyes. The room felt smaller, their presence oppressive, but Mia's words shifted the ground beneath me. Tell me more, I said into the phone, voice gaining strength, rising above a murmur. Mia continued, her enthusiasm building. The trust's irrevocability clause? It's been upheld in similar cases. I've attached precedents. No court will touch it without ironclad proof of duress, which they don't have. And get this. Your parents have a history. Pulled a similar stunt with an aunt years ago, public record. I found the case file. If they push, we countersue for fraud and emotional distress. You've got the high ground, Sav. Call me if they escalate. The line beeped as she sent the email, my phone vibrating again in my hand. Notification popping up. I lowered the device slowly, thumb tapping to end the call, the click echoing in my mind. My heart raced, not with fear now, but with a surging clarity, the true scale of the trust's power unveiled in this precise moment. It wasn't just a document, it was an unbreachable wall, backed by evidence that exposed their deceit. Their forged papers, still on the table, now seemed pathetic, ink mocking their greed. Dad's face twisted, confusion flickering as he snatched a glance at Mom, his pointed finger dropping to his side, fist clenching loosely. "What was that about?" Mom demanded, her voice pitching higher, tissue shredding slightly in her grip as she twisted it. Clara leaned in, phone forgotten, her smirk fading to a scowl, lips parting in anticipation. I set my phone down deliberately on the table, screen facing up, the email notification glaring like a beacon. "That," I said, my tone even, measured as I met each of their eyes in turn, "was my colleague." Confirming what I already knew. My fingers drummed once on the wood, a soft thud before stilling. Dad barked a laugh, forced and hollow, rubbing his chin with a rough hand. "Colleague? This isn't some game, Savannah. Whatever she said doesn't change facts." But his eyes darted to the papers, uncertainty creeping in, his posture slumping just a fraction. Mom's hand fluttered to her throat, fingers grazing her necklace, chain cool against her skin. "Don't bluff, dear. We're serious." Clara piped up, voice shrill, "Yeah, hang up your little lawyer friend, sign the damn thing." But the call had changed everything, the external validation crashing into my humiliation like a wave extinguishing fire. I felt the shift in my core, shoulders squaring, breath steadying as I inhaled deeply, the air fresher somehow. The evidence Mia provided wasn't just words, it was ammunition. Digital trails, legal precedents, historical dirt on their past schemes. Their verdict now rang empty, a hollow threat against an arsenal I hadn't fully revealed yet. I picked up my phone again, opening the email with a swipe, attachments loading with a soft whir. Scrolling through, eyes scanning the affidavits, my lips curved faintly, the first hint of a smile. Dad noticed, stepping back involuntarily, his shoe scraping the floor. "What's so funny?" he growled, but his bluster weakened, hands shoving into his pockets. Mom's eyes widened, tissue dropping to her lap, forgotten. Clara fidgeted, uncrossing her arms to pick at a nail, her confidence cracking. "This call," I replied, voice calm but laced with steel, setting the phone down once more, "just proved your papers are worthless, forged, and the trust protecting this estate, ironclad. You can't touch it." The words hung, the revelations sinking in, their faces paling in unison. Dad's jaw slackened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. Mom gasped softly, hand covering her mouth, fingers trembling. Clara's eyes darted between them, her foot stilling mid-tap. The moment stretched, the clock's tick louder now, marking the pivot. My deepest low, disowned, belittled, transformed by this single call into empowerment. Mia's evidence illuminated the path forward, the trust strength no longer hidden but blazing. They shifted uncomfortably, the couch creaking under their weight, realization dawning like a slow burn. I sat taller, the humiliation shedding like old skin, replaced by quiet triumph. This was the turning point. Their assault met its match. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner kicking on, cool air whispering through the vents as their expressions shifted from triumph to bewilderment. Dad's clenched fist loosened at his side, fingers flexing uncertainly, while Mom's hand dropped from her mouth, hovering mid-air like she'd forgotten what to do with it. Clara's scowl deepened, her nail-picking pausing as she sat forward, spine rigid against the couch cushions. I let the moment linger, savoring the flip, their power play crumbling under the weight of truth. My phone lay there on the table, email open, attachments glaring like spotlights on their deceit. Slowly I picked up the forged papers again, holding them between thumb and forefinger as if they were contaminated, the edges crinkling softly in the quiet. "These," I said, my voice steady, rising to fill the room, "are fakes, poor ones at that." I flipped to the signature page, pointing at Graham's supposed scrawl, my nail tapping the ink. Graham's hand shook in her last years, Parkinson's made loops wobbly. This? Too smooth, too steady, and the date? Post-dates the trust by months. Dad's face flushed deeper, a vein pulsing in his forehead as he snatched the papers from me, his grip crumpling the corner. "What trust? You're bluffing," he growled, but his eyes darted over the text, scanning frantically, pupils dilating with dawning panic. Mom recovered first, her voice pitching into a whine, hands wringing the shredded tissue in her lap. "Savannah, honey, don't be ridiculous. We had a lawyer. It's all legal." But her gaze flicked to Dad, seeking reassurance that wasn't there, her foot jiggling nervously, heel clicking against the floor. Clara jumped in, her tone accusatory. pointing a manicured finger at me. Yeah, what's this trust crap? You're making stuff up to keep it all. Selfish as always. She tossed her hair, but the gesture lacked its usual flair, strands sticking to her damp forehead. I leaned back in the armchair, crossing my legs deliberately, ankle over knee, mirroring Dad's earlier pose but with calm authority. No bluffing. Before Graham and Pops passed, I set up an irrevocable trust. Everything, the house, the savings, the investments, transferred into it. Untouchable. I paused, letting the words sink, watching Mom's color drain, her cheeks paling as she clutched her necklace, chain twisting under her fingers. Dad tossed the papers onto the table with a slap, the sound sharp and paced again, his steps heavier, erratic. You had no right, that's our inheritance! His voice boomed, but cracked at the end, fists balling at his sides. Clara snorted, trying to rally, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. Prove it. Show us this so-called trust. I smiled faintly, not warm, but cool, controlled, as I tapped my phone screen, pulling up the emailed affidavits. Gladly. I turned the device toward them, scrolling slowly so they could see. The notary's statement, time-stamped filings, handwriting analysis report. See here? Your will contradicts public records, and Mia, my colleague, just confirmed your history of this. Remember Aunt Lydia? You tried the same stunt, forging her docs for her condo. Court threw it out. Dad stopped pacing abruptly, his shoe scuffing to a halt, face ashen as he stared at the screen, hands trembling slightly as he reached out but didn't touch it. Mom gasped, genuine this time, her hand flying to her chest, pressing hard as if to steady her heart. How dare you dig up old dirt? That was a misunderstanding. But her eyes betrayed her, wide and evasive, avoiding mine as she shifted on the couch, fabric rustling uncomfortably. Clara's smirk faltered completely, her mouth opening and closing like a fish, finally sputtering. That's not fair. We deserve a piece. Mom and Dad raised you? Raised me? The hypocrisy ignited something deep, a fire I'd banked for years now, roaring free. I stood then, rising smoothly, my height matching Dad's as I faced them, hands loose at my sides but fingers curling into loose fists. Raised me? You left me at 6, chasing deals and dollars. Graham and Pops did the raising, school nights, scraped knees, all of it. You called maybe twice a year, always sniffing for money. My voice rose, not yelling but firm, each word deliberate, cutting through their scramble. Dad backed up a step, bumping the coffee table, the legs scraping wood. That's not, we were building a future, he stammered, but I cut him off, stepping closer, my shadow falling over the forged papers. And Clara, your golden child? You praised her for nothing, pageants, parties, while ignoring my grades, my law degree. But now, when there's $3 million on the line, your family? I turned to her, eyes locking on hers, watching her shrink back, shoulders hunching. You've never once asked about me, not really, just showed up for the grab. She averted her gaze, picking at her sleeve now, threads pulling under her nails. Mom tried to interject, voice quavering. We love you, Savannah. This is just business. Business, the word hung, absurd in this home of memories. I shook my head, a short, sharp motion, hair swaying against my shoulders. Love? You disowned me 10 minutes ago, threatened eviction. But here's the truth. The trust is for their legacy. A community center, like Graham dreamed, not your pockets. Dad's scramble peaked, his hands gesturing wildly, voice desperate. We can fight this. Lawyers, courts. But I held up my phone, the email still open. Try it. Countersuit for fraud awaits. Emotional distress, too. You'll lose more than you gain. The room fell quiet again, their stunned faces a tableau of defeat. Dad slumping onto the couch, arm, head in hands, fingers gripping his hair. Mom dabbing real tears now, tissue sodden. Clara staring at the floor, foot still, her bravado shattered. I felt no pity, only a clean release. The hypocrisy laid bare like exposed wires. You've always chosen greed over us, I said softly, but with finality, turning toward the door. Now it chooses you out. I grabbed my keys from the side table, the jingle loud in the hush, and walked to the front door, pulling it open, fresh air rushing in. Leave, now, or I call the police for trespassing. Dad stood shakily helping Mom up, her arm trembling in his grip. Clara followed, bag clutched like a shield, muttering, "This isn't over." But it was. Their scramble pathetic as they filed out, suitcases dragging, wheels rumbling over the porch. I shut the door behind them with a firm click, leaning against it, back pressing wood, exhaling long and deep. The house felt lighter, echoes of their venom fading. Outside, car doors slammed, engine revving as they drove off, tires crunching gravel. Alone, I sank to the floor, knees drawing up, a sob escaping, not from hurt but relief. I'd exposed them, rejected their farce, and claimed my peace. The trust held. Their hypocrisy, rejected forever. The sob ebbed into quiet sniffles, my back sliding down the door until I sat fully on the welcome mat, knees hugged to my chest, the wood cool against my spine through my blouse. Relief washed over me in waves, mingling with the lingering adrenaline, leaving my limbs heavy and my mind buzzing. The house, once a battlefield, now hummed with peace, the grandfather clock ticking steadily in the hall, a reminder that time moved on without them. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, skin salty from tears, and pushed myself up, legs wobbling slightly as I steadied against the wall. My phone buzzed again on the table, Mia's name flashing. Mia, my rock through this, the one who'd armed me with the truth. I answered, voice thick but grateful. "They're gone," I said simply, and her whoop of victory echoed through the speaker, pulling a genuine laugh from me, the sound foreign after the tension. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the kitchen golden, I texted a few colleagues. Mia, of course, and 2 others from the firm, Alex, the sharp-witted paralegal who'd helped with research, and Jordan, our senior partner who'd mentored me through law school doubts. "Drinks at my place? Need to decompress." Their replies came fast, emojis of raised glasses and hearts, a digital hug that warmed me. This wasn't blood family. This was chosen, built from shared late nights and mutual respect, not obligation or greed. While my biological ties had poisoned the air with demands, these allies had lifted me without asking for a thing. By 7, the doorbell rang softly. Not the aggressive chime from earlier, but a polite ding that felt like an invitation. I opened it to Mia first, her arms laden with a bottle of wine and takeout bags, steam escaping from the tops, the savory scent of Thai curry wafting in. She pulled me into a real hug, tight and sincere, her chin resting on my shoulder. "You did it, Sav. Proud of you." Her words muffled against my hair, but they landed soft, mending cracks I hadn't acknowledged. Alex arrived next, juggling a 6-pack of beer and a board game box, his grin wide as he kicked off his shoes at the door, laces dangling. "Figured we need fun after that drama," he said, voice light, but his eyes searched mine, checking for lingering hurt. Jordan was last, carrying a bouquet of daisies, simple, bright, from the corner store, stems wrapped in damp paper towels. "For the victor," he quipped, handing them over with a bow, his tie loosened from the office day. We gathered in the living room, the same space that had hosted toxicity hours ago, now transformed. I dimmed the lights, flicking on the lamp with a soft click, its warm glow chasing shadows. Mia uncorked the wine, the pop echoing cheerfully, pouring generous glasses that clinked as we settled, me back in the armchair, now a throne of comfort. Them on the couch, knees bumping the coffee table, where the forged papers still lay. Forgotten relics. Alex nudged them aside with his foot, socks sliding on the wood, and stacked the takeout containers instead, lids snapping open to reveal pad thai and spring rolls, chopsticks distributed with a flourish. Conversation flowed easy, starting light. Jordan raised his glass first, the red wine swirling. "To Savannah, who just slayed dragons in her own castle," we toasted, glasses meeting with a clear ting, liquid sloshing gently. I sipped, the tartness grounding me, and shared the play-by-play, their forged docs, the disownment verdict, Mia's timely call. Mia interjected, mimicking Dad's bluster with exaggerated gestures, her hands waving wildly, eliciting laughs that built, mine joining tentatively at first, then fully, belly deep. Alex nodded along, twirling noodles on his fork, sauce dripping onto a napkin he dabbed quickly. "Classic fraud attempt. Seen it in cases, but never this personal. You handled it like a pro." His praise was casual but sincere, his fork pausing mid-air as he met my eyes. As plates emptied, crumbs scattered on the table, the talk deepened. Jordan set his glass down with a soft thunk, leaning forward, elbows on knees. "Family isn't always blood, kid. Mine disowned me years ago. Coming out wasn't their vibe, but look at us now, chosen crew, stronger bonds." His voice was steady, fingers interlacing as he spoke, a subtle vulnerability in his posture. Mia squeezed my knee, her touch warm through my pants. "Exactly, we're your backup, no greed, just support." Alex chimed in, stacking empty containers with a rattle. "And board games. Nothing says family like crushing you at Monopoly." We laughed again, the sound filling the room, contrasting sharply with the earlier silence after their threats. I felt the difference viscerally, the toxic encounter's chill replaced by this warmth. Where my parents had loomed, demanding and cold, these friends sprawled comfortably, shoes off, socks mismatched. Clara's smirks had cut, Mia's smiles healed. Dad's pacing had oppressed, Jordan's steady presence anchored. We played the game Alex brought, tokens clicking on the board, hawk dice rolling with thuds, banter flying. "You're bankrupt already?" Mia teased Alex, her token landing on his property, paper money exchanging hands with playful slaps. I watched them, my own token advancing slowly, a quiet joy blooming in my chest, untangling the knots from earlier. Later, as wine dwindled, glasses half empty on coasters, conversation turned reflective. I shared a memory of Graham, her hands kneading dough in this kitchen, flour dusting her apron. They wanted to erase that, sell it all. My voice cracked slightly, finger tracing the glass rim, producing a faint hum. Jordan nodded, his hand patting my shoulder briefly, firm and reassuring. "But you preserved it. That's what matters," Mia added. "And we're here to help build on it, the community center idea? Count me in for pro bono work." Alex raised his beer bottle, foam lingering on the lip. "Me too, blueprints, permits, whatever." The evening wound down naturally, hugs at the door lingering, promises of brunches and case collaborations. Mia was last to leave, pausing on the porch, turning back with a soft smile. "You're not alone, Sav. Ever." Her words hung in the night air, stars twinkling above as she walked to her car, engine purring softly. Closing the door, the latch clicking gently, I leaned against it again, but this time with a full heart, not exhaustion. The house echoed with their laughter's ghost, a balm over the earlier venom. Biological family had tried to break me, chosen ones rebuilt me, affirming bonds forged in trust, not blood. This gathering wasn't just decompression, it was validation, a stark contrast proving true, family chooses you back. That sense of affirmation lingered into the next morning, sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, warming the quilt as I stirred awake, the faint scent of last night's takeout still hanging in the air. My phone lay on the nightstand, screen dark but buzzing with a new notification, a follow-up email from Mia, attaching more legal templates for the aftermath. I sat up, rubbing sleep from my eyes with the heels of my hands, knuckles pressing into sockets until stars burst behind my lids. The confrontation was over, but the cleanup loomed, a necessary fortress to build around my peace. No more open doors for their toxicity. Today I'd enforce boundaries, brick by legal brick, ensuring their greed couldn't creep back in. I padded downstairs in slippers, the stairs creaking under my weight, and brewed coffee, the machine gurgling as ground steeped, steam curling up to fog the window. Mug in hand, hot ceramic burning my palms slightly, I settled at the kitchen table, laptop open with a soft whir, Mia's email glowing on the screen. "Restraining order drafts," it read, "and cease and desist for any further claims." My fingers hovered over the trackpad, cursor blinking expectantly. This wasn't revenge. It was protection, a redefinition of engagement on my terms. They'd disowned me. Fine. Now I'd make it mutual, legally binding. The primary task unfolded slowly, deliberately, drafting the no-contact order. I clicked into the template, text filling the page, my eyes scanning clauses on harassment, property trespass. Micro-movements grounded me. Sipping coffee, the bitter liquid sliding down my throat, adjusting my posture, chair scraping faintly as I leaned in. I typed my parents' names, Richard and Elaine Morgan, fingers striking keys with measured force, each letter a small severance. Clara's followed, her full name appearing stark on the screen. "Prohibited from approaching within 500 feet, I added, copying from Mia's notes, the cursor jumping ahead. My free hand drummed the table edge, nails tapping wood in rhythm with my thoughts. A call to the firm came next. I dialed Jordan, speaker on, phone propped against a napkin holder. His voice crackled through, warm but professional. "Morning, Sav. How's the head after last night?" I chuckled softly, tracing the mug's rim with my finger, steam dampening my skin. "Clear enough for paperwork. Need your sign-off on these orders." We talked through it, his end rustling with papers, pen scratching as he noted changes. Add emotional distress evidence, their threats yesterday, logs of calls, too. I nodded to myself, minimizing the window to pull up my call history, scrolling through sparse entries from them, timestamps glaring like accusations. "Got it." I murmured, copying dates, the paste command echoing a soft beep. As we refined, my mind wandered to the why, the aftermath's weight pressing like an unseen hand on my shoulder. Their scramble yesterday had exposed cracks, but without boundaries they'd probe again, letters or lawyers in tow. Jordan paused, his chair creaking over the line. "This is smart, kid. Redefines family as safe space, not war zone." His words landed, a quiet affirmation, my throat tightening as I swallowed. Yeah, no more games. We wrapped up, him promising to file by afternoon, the call ending with a click that felt like a lock turning. Alone again, I stood, pacing the kitchen, mug forgotten on the table, cooling. The floor tiles chilled my feet through slippers, each step a measured circuit around the island. Blocking their numbers came next, simple but profound. I grabbed my phone, thumb swiping to contacts, hovering over Dad's entry. Block, I tapped, the confirmation popping up, red button glaring. My finger pressed, screen flashing briefly, a digital wall erected. Mom's followed, then Clara's, each block a micro-release, shoulders dropping incrementally, tension uncoiling like a spring. Notifications silenced, I exhaled sharply, breath fogging the window as I stopped to stare out at the garden, leaves rustling in a breeze. But boundaries weren't just digital, physical ones too. I moved to the study, pulling open the desk drawer with a rasp, rifling through for the trust binder. Flipping pages, the rustle soft, I reviewed security clauses, cameras perhaps, or updated locks. Online shopping tab open, I browsed deadbolts, cursor clicking options, adding to cart with decisive taps. Next day delivery, it promised. I'd install them myself, screwdriver in hand, screws turning firmly into wood. My fingers clenched, imagined tools, knuckles whitening. This fortress was mine to build, each layer shielding Graham and Pop's legacy. And my peace. Internal doubts surfaced then, a whisper as I saved the order, confirmation email pinging. Was this too harsh? Disownment echoed both ways now. I sank into the desk chair, leather sighing under me, staring at the binder's cover, embossed letters blurring slightly. They'd abandoned me long ago, this was just formalizing it. No pity for their pain, they'd inflicted plenty. My hand rested on the pages, paper warm from handling, a tangible reminder of my proactive stand. Redefining engagement meant no half measures, no holiday cards, no just checking in calls that masked probes, strict no contact, enforced by law if needed. Mia texted mid-morning, bubble popping up, filed the orders, court's fast-tracking. I replied with a thumbs up, but added, thanks for everything. Her response was quick, anytime. Lunch soon? Warmth bloomed, contrasting the cold severance. With allies like her, boundaries felt less like isolation, more like curation, keeping out poison, letting in light. By afternoon, Jordan confirmed filing, his email attaching copies, attachments loading with a spin. I printed them, machine whirring, pages spitting out warm and inked. Signing my name at the bottom, pen gliding smoothly, the flourish felt final, a period on their chapter. Filing them in the binder, tabs clicking into place, I closed it with a thud, locking the drawer, key twisting securely. The day wore on, sun shifting shadows across the floor, but the aftermath's handling crystallized my new rules. Engage only with those who uplift, protect the estate fiercely, live without their shadow. I cooked dinner simply, pasta boiling, water bubbling. As normalcy returned, fork twirling strands later, sauce tangy on my tongue. No intrusions, just me, the house, and earned solitude. That night, lying in bed, quilt tucked to chin, I reflected on the fortifications. Boundaries weren't walls of anger but gates of self-respect. They'd try breaching, Mia warned of appeals, but I'd hold firm, documents as shields. Sleep came easier, breaths even, the fortress standing tall in my mind. No more vulnerability, only strength, redefined on my terms. That newfound strength carried me through the following weeks, a quiet undercurrent as I dove headfirst into transforming the secured estate into something living, breathing, a tribute to Graham and Pops that reclaimed the Morgan name from the shadows of greed. It started one crisp morning at the firm, the office humming with the usual clatter of keyboards and muffled phone calls, but for me it was the day I pitched the community center idea formally, channeling my legal wins into a blueprint for positive change. I'd spent nights sketching plans on notepads, pencil scratching late into the hours, eraser shavings dusting the table like snow. Now, with the trust's protections locked in, I could act, turning their legacy into impact on my terms, not theirs. I arrived early, coffee in hand from the corner shop, the cup sleeve crinkling as I gripped it tighter, nerves buzzing despite the resolve. My desk waited, stacked with files, but I bypassed it, heading straight to Jordan's office, knuckles rapping softly on the open door. He looked up from his computer, glasses perched on his nose, screen reflecting in the lenses. "Savannah? Come in. Everything okay with the orders?" His chair swiveled toward me, creaking faintly as I stepped inside, closing the door with a gentle click behind me. The room smelled of fresh printouts and his peppermint gum, a comforting mix. "Yeah, all quiet on that front," I said, settling into the guest chair, its cushion dipping under my weight. I set the coffee down on his desk, steam curling lazily, and pulled out my folder. Pages of notes, trust excerpts photocopied, edges aligned neatly. "But I want to talk about next steps. The estate. Graham and Pops always dreamed of a community center. Classes, youth programs, a place for locals like they were." My fingers tapped the folder's cover, a rhythmic patter, as I met his eyes, searching for that mentor spark. Jordan leaned back, steepling his fingers, elbows on armrests. "I've heard you mention it. What's the vision?" I opened the folder, spreading sheets across his desk, papers whispering against wood. "Using the trust funds, allocated for charitable purposes. I've outlined the legal framework, nonprofit setup, tax exemptions under 501c3. The house could be the hub, renovate the backyard for events, convert the study into a classroom." My voice gained momentum, words flowing as I pointed to bullet points, pen cap clicking open and shut in my other hand. Jordan nodded slowly, his gaze tracing the plans, one finger adjusting his glasses. "Solid start. But impact needs scale. Tie it to your expertise. Legal aid clinics for low-income families, maybe? Reclaim that family name by helping others avoid what you went through." His suggestion hit like a spark. Igniting ideas I'd half-formed, I leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fabric of my sleeves brushing paper. "Exactly. Workshops on estate planning, trusts to protect against predatory relatives. Honor Graham and Pops by educating, preventing greed from tearing families apart." Jordan smiled faintly, reaching for a notepad, pen scratching as he jotted notes. "I like it. We can loop in pro bono hours from the firm. I'll champion it upstairs." His enthusiasm mirrored mine, a shared energy building, my foot tapping under the desk in excitement. The conversation deepened from there, micro details unfolding like threads in a tapestry. We brainstormed funding, trust disbursements first, then grants, my fingers scrolling on my phone to pull up application sites, screen glowing as I bookmarked. "See here? Community foundations offer matching funds for legacy projects." Jordan hummed agreement, his mouse clicking to open emails, typing a quick draft to colleagues. "And naming, Morgan Community Hub, reclaims the name positively, washes away the stain your parents left." I paused, throat tightening at the thought, my hand stilling on the pen. Morgan, once synonymous with abandonment in my mind, now a banner for good. "Yes," I whispered, then stronger. "Absolutely." He pushed back from the desk slightly, chair wheels rolling with a soft rumble, and fixed me with a serious look. "This is you taking control, Sav, not just defending, creating. Your legal smarts got you here, now use them to build." His words landed heavy, a validation that swelled in my chest, my breath catching as I nodded. We mapped logistics next, zoning permits, my pen circling key steps on the plan, architect contacts, Jordan texting a friend mid-talk, phone chiming with a reply. "He's in, free consult." Each edition felt like reclaiming ground, turning the estate from a battle prize into a beacon. As we talked, internal shifts surfaced, a realization crystallizing amid the planning. This wasn't about erasing my parents, it was redefining legacy on my terms, using the very tools that thwarted them to uplift others. My fingers gripped the folder's edge, paper bending slightly as memories flashed, Graham's stories over tea, cup clinking saucer, Pop's quiet nods of pride. Their name Morgan had been tainted by greed, but I'd polish it anew. Jordan noticed my pause, his pen hovering. "Penny for your thoughts." I exhaled, setting the pen down with a clack. "Just this feels right, like I'm honoring them without the weight of blood ties dictating." He leaned in, voice dropping conspiratorially. "That's the beauty. Family names evolve. Yours becomes synonymous with justice, community, not avarice." We wrapped up after an hour, him stacking the papers neatly, tapping them aligned. "I'll get the ball rolling on the nonprofit filing. You handle the trust amendments?" I stood, collecting my things, folder tucked under arm, coffee now cold but grabbed anyway. "On it, Thanks, Jordan, for everything. He waved it off, but his smile was genuine, hand extending for a quick shake, grip firm. Leaving his office, door swinging shut behind me with a soft thud, I walked back to my desk, steps lighter, the hallway's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Colleagues nodded hellos, but my mind raced ahead, emails to send, forms to fill. At my computer, keys clacking as I logged in, I drafted the trust updates, allocating specific funds for renovations, clauses for ongoing programs. Fingers flew over the keyboard, the rhythmic tap-tap grounding my focus. This positive impact, legal clinics, youth mentoring, would echo Graham's kindness, Pops' steadiness, reclaiming Morgan as a force for good. Lunchtime came, but I worked through, sandwich unwrapped one-handed, crumbs dotting the desk as I researched similar centers. Websites loaded, images of bustling halls inspiring, mouse scrolling smoothly. A call to Mia interrupted, her voice bright. Heard about the pitch, I'm in for the clinics. We brainstormed over speaker, her end noisy with office chatter, my notes expanding, pen underlining key ideas. Free Will's workshops, prevent forgeries like yours. Her insight sharpened mine, a collaborative spark. By afternoon's end, inbox pinging with approvals, the initiative felt real, a living legacy. I shut down the computer, screen fading to black, and gathered my bag, strap over shoulder. Driving home, windows down, wind whipping hair, the realization deepened. This was my reclamation, success wielded not for revenge but renewal. The house greeted me, key turning in the lock, door creaking open to familiar scents. In the kitchen I poured water, glass filling with a gurgle, sipping as I stared at the backyard, future site of change. No longer just a home, a hub. Morgan, redefined by me. Standing there in the kitchen, glass still half full in my hand, water droplets condensing on the outside and trickling down to wet my fingers. I felt a profound shift settle over me, like the quiet after a storm, when the air finally clears. The backyard stretched out beyond the window, overgrown in spots where Pops hadn't tended it in his last months, but alive with potential, wildflowers poking through the grass, bees humming lazily around them. I'd spent the day immersed in plans, legal frameworks snapping into place like puzzle pieces, but now in this solitary moment, reflection crept in unbidden, pulling me deeper into thoughts of worth and peace. It wasn't about the community center anymore or the trust's unyielding walls. It was about me, untangling the last knots of doubt that my family had tied so long ago. I set the glass down on the counter with a soft clink, the sound echoing faintly in the empty room, and wandered to the back door, pushing it open with a creak of hinges. The evening air rushed in, cool and carrying the scent of earth after a distant rain, brushing against my skin as I stepped onto the porch. Barefoot on the wooden planks, splinters rough under my soles, I sat on the steps, hugging my knees, chin resting atop them. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows from the oak tree Pops had planted decades ago, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Memories flooded then, not the bitter ones of abandonment, but the core ones. Graham's voice reading bedtime stories, her hand stroking my hair until I drifted off, Pops teaching me to ride a bike, his grip steady on the seat until I pedaled alone. They'd seen my worth when no one else did, not as a means to an end, but inherently, like a fact, etched in stone. But had I? For years I'd chased validation through achievements, top grades, law degree, the trust itself, as if proving myself to ghosts. My parents' dismissal, Clara's smug comparisons, they'd burrowed deep, whispering that I wasn't enough unless I outshone their neglect. Even thwarting them, exposing the fraud in that dramatic showdown, had felt like a win tied to their loss, my value measured against their greed. I traced a finger along the porch railing, paint chipped and flaking under my nail, peeling away layers like I was shedding old skin. The realization dawned slowly, warm as the fading light. My worth wasn't in the fight, or the legacy I'd build. It was internal. A quiet flame that had burned all along, independent of their shade, or anyone else's praise. I stood, brushing dirt from my pants, fabric whispering against my legs, and walked into the yard, grass tickling my ankles. The garden bed Graham had loved lay fallow, soil dark and fertile, waiting. I knelt, fingers sinking into the earth, cool and crumbly, scooping a handful and letting it sift through my grasp. This was peace, not the absence of conflict, but the embrace of self. No more seeking approval from those who'd never give it. No more defining myself by their voids. Mia's support, Jordan's mentorship, the colleagues who'd become family, they mirrored what I'd built inside, but didn't create it. My legal knowledge, the trust's creation, the center's inception, all extensions of an inherent strength I'd doubted too long. As stars began pricking the twilight sky, one by one like hesitant lights, I headed back inside, door latching softly behind me. The house felt different now, not a fortress against invaders, but a sanctuary for growth. I climbed the stairs, hands sliding along the banister, wood smooth from years of touch, and entered my room, flipping on the bedside lamp with a click, its glow soft and inviting. Sitting on the bed, quilt bunching under me, I pulled out an old journal from the nightstand drawer, pages yellowed and edges curled. Flipping to a blank one, pen cap popping off with my teeth, I wrote, "I am enough. Not because I won, but because I am." The ink flowed steadily, letters looping in my familiar script, each word affirmation etched into paper. That night, sleep came deep and dreamless, my body sinking into the mattress, breaths even and untroubled. Mornings after brought the same clarity, waking to birdsong filtering through the window, curtains billowing slightly in the draft. At work, drafting center proposals, fingers typing fluidly on the keyboard, the drive felt pure, untethered from past validations. Calls with Mia turned to laughs over coffee plans, her voice light on the line, no undercurrent of proving worth. Even glancing at family photos on the wall, Graham's smile, Pop's wink, evoked gratitude, not ache, their love a foundation I'd internalized at last. Weeks blurred into a rhythm, renovations starting, hammers echoing in the yard as workers framed new spaces, classes outlined, flyers designed on my laptop, colors popping on the screen, but the true peace rooted deeper, in quiet evenings alone cooking simple meals, onions sizzling in the pan, steam rising, or reading in Pop's recliner, book pages turning with a hush. No longer did doubts whisper. Self-validation silenced them, an internal compass guiding true north. One afternoon, rain pattering against the roof like gentle applause, I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open to trust updates, cursor blinking. An email from a potential partner pinged, but I paused, closing my eyes, breathing in the petrichor through the cracked window. Worth wasn't in successes or standoffs. It was here, in this breath, this choice. My family had tried to diminish it, but they'd only highlighted its resilience. Opening my eyes, I typed a reply, keys clacking confidently, at peace with the woman I'd become. Not defined by them, but by me. The realization wasn't a thunderclap, but a gentle unfolding, like dawn breaking. I no longer needed their acknowledgement. Mine sufficed. And in that, true peace bloomed, vast and unshakable, a legacy all my own. Have you ever felt like your worth was tied to someone else's approval, only to realize it's been inside you all along? That's what hit me after all this. Protecting my grandparents' legacy wasn't just about the trust or the confrontation. It was about claiming my own value beyond the greed and dismissal, standing up to my parents and sister, exposing their fraud, and building that community center. It taught me self-validation is the real win. So, what do you think? Did I go far enough in cutting them off and reclaiming everything? Or should I have done more? Drop a comment below with your take, and share if you've had a similar family showdown where you had to draw those hard lines. Your stories inspire me, and who knows, maybe they'll spark the next tale here. Remember, you're stronger than the doubts others plant. Stand firm in your worth. It's yours to define. Hit that subscribe button for more real-life dramas and triumphs. Thanks for listening. Let's keep the conversation going.